Get the easy-to-deploy, scalable solution for forming the best decision-making frameworks to maximize ROI. Minimize operational costs and risks while maximizing asset life. Start your operational reliability journey now. Register for a demo today. Today's dynamic industrial asset operations demand efficiency. For getting optimum results at an optimum price, digital effectiveness is needed. Presenting Papillon, a best-in-class solution for achieving reliable industrial operations. The most daunting tasks in today's industrial world are optimizing asset operations, reducing maintenance costs. Eugenie's AI-powered solution, Papillon, made an economic impact of $2 billion by reducing maintenance costs of a global oil and gas firm by 20%. Real-time insights and root cause analysis by Eugenie can drastically reduce data-to-action time from several hours to a few minutes. With Eugenie, improved operational efficiency can result in 20% reduced maintenance costs. Save your energy costs by 5% with Eugenie, thereby heading towards sustainable operations. Track and diagnose asset performance in real time with Eugenie's asset monitoring solution. Eugenie makes you aware of unforeseen events in advance. Take the charge of your assets and processes now. Ensure better reliability for your assets with 90% reduced downtime. Get the easy-to-deploy, scalable solution for forming the best decision-making frameworks to maximize ROI. Minimize operational costs and risks while maximizing asset life. Start your operational reliability journey now. Register for a demo today.
Good evening, everyone. Myself Pratik Mukherjee from CII, and I welcome everyone to today's knowledge session on overcoming AI adoption issues for industrial operation, organized by CII in association with Eugenie.ai. I hope everyone who has joined us today is following all new normal guidelines of COVID-19 pandemic to protect themselves and other in society. In today's session, we will discuss about there is a four things we will discuss. First one is technology first versus decision first AI solution. What will be drive more adoption by the people on the shop floor? Second is role of technology promoter within the organization. Third, which are the areas within the industrial operation that would be disrupted by AI in the next 2 to 3 years? And fourth one, how AI can solve bigger issues such as reduction of carbon emissions, risk mitigations of hazardous incidents, or operational continuity under constraints such as COVID. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID has reinstated the importance of digital technologies adoption for transforming the operational industry. Artificial intelligence stands out as a transformational technology of our digital age, and its practical application throughout the economy its growing space. The domain such as finance, sales and marketing, etc., have adopted AI early, and it has started showing some encouraging results in terms of improving efficiency and cost savings. In industrial operation, we are yet to get great impact of AI and associated technologies. To spread awareness about how AI can contribute in solving complex industrial challenges, we have our esteemed speakers today. We will share and discuss about the topic. We seek your valuable participations as a speaker in this virtual panel discussion session. Now I want to introduce CII. The Confederation of Indian Industry works to create and sustain an environment conducive to the development of India, partnering industry, government, and civil society through advisory and consultative processes. CI is a non-government, non-for-profit, industry-led, and industry-managed organization with the theme of our 2020-21 as Build India for a New World, Lives Livelihood Growth. CI will work with government and industry to bring back growth to this economy and mitigate the enormous human cost of the pandemic by protecting jobs and livelihoods. For 125 years, CI has been working on shaping India's development journey, and this year, more than ever before, it will continue to proactively transform Indian industry engagement in national development with 68 offices, including 10 Center of Excellence in India and 9 overseas offices. CI serve as a reference point for Indian industry and the international business community. Now I want to introduce Eugenie.ai. Eugenie offering consists of AI-driven products for industrial domain for ensuring operational efficiency. Eugenie missions includes democratization of data-driven insight of to driven complex operational decisions. The high impacted industrial decisions require a robust decision intelligence solution like Eugenio that can leverage both human and machine intelligence to improve reliability, efficiency, and sustainability of industrial assets and processes. Eugenio diagnostic platform has helped several industrial organizations in proactively diagnosing operational glitches, resulting in the impact of more than US $2 million across several geographical locations. Now, I would like to introduce today's esteemed presenter, Dr. Soudip Rai Choudhury, the founder and CEO of Eugenie.ai. He is the founder and CEO of Eugenio. He is a passionate technology enthusiast with a doctorate from the University of Trento, Europe. Soudip is an accomplished entrepreneur and avid advocate of industrial sustainability, armed with a tireless vigor to solve complex technical and industrial problems. He strongly believes in the power of AI engineering and design for creating a trusted awareness between humans and technology. And our today's second speaker is Mr. Hemchandra Bhatt. He is a leading robotics and drone practice in Wipro Limited. He has led AI-based solution implementations for industrial automation, autonomous driving, financial applications, embedded system for automotive, industrial consumer applications, VLSI and SOC implementations for automotive and consumer applications. Also, personal computer products for India market, he also developing. Some of the products he was engineered have been in the production and used by customer worldwide. He has 2 patents granted and 1 patent pending for grant. He has a master degree in software system from BITS Pilani. Mr. Lakshman Venugopal, former executive director and head Mumbai Refinery of Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, HPCL. Presently, he designated partner of Force Energy Consultants LLP. He is a dynamic and proactive senior management professional in a mechanical engineer by qualification. He processes he possesses diverse exposure and varied experience of 38 plus years in the oil and gas sector, spread over 2 hydrocarbon refineries as well as the key position in HPCL headquarters office. He has successfully headed HPCL Mumbai refinery with a focus of safety, environment, reliability, quality, and productivity. Record levels of safety and production were achieved during his tenure as the refinery head. He has hands-on experience in setting up greenfield and brownfield projects across 2 refineries at Mumbai and Visakhapatnam. He has extensive experience in inspection and maintenance of static and rotating equipment used in refineries. He is a veteran in turnaround planning and implementation, having completed over 30 numbers of turnarounds of various refinery units, primary, secondary, and tertiary. He is also credited with initiating AI-supported reliability initiatives in refinery process units and allied areas. In the second innings, he is a partner in an oil and gas-based consulting firm in the name and the form of Source Energy Consultants LLP. Now, I want to hand over this forum to Mr. Saudip Chowdhury. Forum is all yours, Saudip.
Thank you, Pratik. Hope you can hear me, and thank you again, all of you, the esteemed speakers as well as the attendees who had take out their time, valuable time, in order to be with us today. First of all, I would say that this is one of the best panel I can ever imagine, right? Where one side we have the greatest technology providers like Wipro and someone like Mr. Hemchandra, who is representing the year-long practice of Wipro in this industry, operation industry, as well as on the other side, we have Mr. Lakshman. His experience speaks for itself, right? So 38 plus years of experience in HPCL, proud to have both of you in this panel. So before we get started, right? So I want to break the ice with the statement, right? Good AI needs good data, right? And in the traditional wisdom, it says that, okay, maybe telecom, maybe other engineering practices, they produce more data than operation industry like oil and gas or say other industrial operations industry. But the recent data says that, one of the study conducted by Deloitte in 2019 speaks about operation industry actually on an yearly, on an average, it produces close to 2,000 petabytes of data annually, which is much more, 10 times more than any other industry you can think of, right? But still, if you think about only great data would drive good AI, that's not true. 91% of the projects today in the operation industry, like especially technology-led projects, are tanked or shelved due to some reason, right? So we'll ask this question to the extreme panelists from both sides, one from the technology solution provider side, another from the consumer side or the practitioner side, to understand what are the root cause behind such failures number, that high 91% failure number in such projects. So before I go to Mr. Hemchandra, I would like to ask Mr. Lakshman, with your experience in HPCL and otherwise, and the current experience, do you see that kind of stark, figure, like from project success to failure rate? And what do you think is the major reason behind such mismatch? Over to you, Mr. Lakshman, if you can throw some light on this.
Good evening, Sadeep.
Thank
Good evening, Mr. Bhatt. Nice to be on this panel. Sadeep, before I talk about failure of AI in the oil and gas sector, I would say that oil and gas sector offers or lends itself quite a bit to AI, and it's surprising why it is not caught on. There are several reasons for that, but we can discuss it as we progress this discussion. But I would say from the mid 80s, the oil and gas, especially the refineries, has had a lot of digital data. Of course, our process and control system engineers were content with just using them as history and analyzing failures of the past. There's nothing which is done to predict failure. So that is where AI comes in, and I'm sure that is a field in which AI will contribute a lot in the oil industry. Now, if you look at the causes, if you were to just narrate some causes which could be the reason for AI being a failure or so-called not a success, I would say, it would be basically, it starts with cultural. Any such initiative has to have a lot of management commitment, conviction, and support. Probably that was not present in adequate quantities. Second is all of us have this reluctance to change, and that also was perhaps a reason for AI not catching on. Then the refineries have their own targets, physical, financial, which are imposed upon them by the management, probably the government also. And they have the safety, environment, and the reliability concern. They are content with running the refineries in a safe way, environmentally friendly way, in a reliable way. So this intervention of AI would be an additional thing. Probably that is what stopped it from being a major, I would say, process, which it should be, as per me. Then there is also the issue of IT and OT, the information technology and operation technology having a kind of, I would say, no convergence. Each of them are operating in their own silos, and that has also caused some issues in AI not catching on. Then there are always other concerns like privacy, about IT security apprehensions. Then you have surveillance fears, basically born out of mistrust. Then there are in our country we have the IT snags also. Then I would say some of these processes are licensed processes. So somebody would also feel that they would not be able to protect the industrial know-how, like that knowledge is power syndrome like thing. Then there's also a feeling within the industry that AI would take a lot of economic costs, high economic costs, and with unclear kind of immediate benefits. So for this, one needs to be patient. Probably the patience was not there. And probably one of the other reasons which I can think of is a lack of adequate skill sets amongst the practitioners. I would not go beyond this. We can have further discussion later, but I think these are the primary reasons as per me.
Yeah. So, of course, before Mr. Bhatt, you jump in, I want to add a few more things. You spoke about culture, and that's a very important aspect that you just brought in, along with the skill set. I mean, I would add one more thing into this, probably other than IT/OT convergence. Though data, I mean, say for example, for successful AI adoption, where we have also seen it's not also the technology, it's also what is going inside the algorithm, very, very important, right? So there, I produce a lot of data. That doesn't mean that all of these data are useful or usable by the algorithm to process it. And with that, I just open up for the solution provider saying that, okay, is it data enough, or it has to be for good AI? You also need to have good data. And in that way, what do you see in operation industry, and what is your point on culture in this industry? Over to you, Mr. Bhatt.
Yeah, thanks, Saudip, and thanks, Lakshman. Thanks, Pratik, as well. So, hope you're able to hear me. I'm talking for the first time, so on this call. Okay, great. So I think I want to go to the, first principles of engineering before I talk about AI itself. I feel there's a fundamental problem there. I think we as technologists, right? So most of the time, I think I spoke to you, Saudip, about this. The problem with most of us is we take technology first approach. Uh, whereas what I feel is that many a times this is where the problem lies. I think if you look at problem first approach, that's what I basically go and talk to my team and say always. Okay, look at the problem. I mean, so what's the customer problem? Have you really understood that? And then think about the AI part of it, right? So, in fact, the first thing I tell my team is, have you ever visited the shop floor, right? So, if you are working for industrial automation, you should have been in the shop floor for at least a month to really understand what's really happening there. Without that understanding, because I think it's quite different from like sitting in, I mean, in a AC room and developing an AI. Well, I mean, you need to really understand the ground realities. I mean, what's really happening on the shop floor, and understand the problem really to basically understand what the operator is trying to do, or what the production manager is trying to achieve through the AI which I'm developing. So if we start thinking from that perspective, I mean, in fact, we started that, and that's when we started looking differently into this world, and said, hey, I mean, maybe this is working, because I think we are trying to help the customer to solve their problem, rather than saying that, okay, I want to implement the greatest of the algorithms in for this problem, right? So I think probably that's where I see a. I mean, once we start from there, then actually most of the things fall in place. Is what I think. Once you tell the customer that, okay, I'm going to solve this problem, not talk about AI or algorithm, but talk about the problem with the customer, and then internally talk about the algorithm, rather than talking algorithm with the customer. So then ask for the data. I think you ask for the right data. I think this is one of the biggest problems. What is right data is again a question. But again, once you convince the customer that, hey, I can deliver the return on investment for you, and you help me with this data, and we have seen most of the times we've been able to get the data. So and I think, of course, there'll be issues and problems over the implementation. It's usually in any project for that matter, but I think those are the two premises I see. Basically, understand the problem, then look for the AI solution for that, and then convince the customer that I'm going to help you and generate an ROI. Then the data comes to you.
Yeah. So thank you again So you brought up another important aspect about ROI, and most often, Mr. Lakshman, you probably would agree with me. So most of these one of its kind or first of its kind projects, like where even the technology solution provider, you may say the numbers in the air, but like you really do not know, right? Every context is different, every operation is different. Oftentimes you hear out, so this is a great technology, but it would not work in our scenario. Like I often encounter that one of the problem, and people say that, okay, good AI algorithm doesn't ensure that it's going to be applicable or it's going to be actionable for us. And that's one of the dilemma from a solution provider point of view. Like, how do you ensure that you convince the sponsor of the project in the operational side, from the practitioner side, to believe that what you're going to deliver would make sense for them? So how do you, Mr. Bhatt, how do you approach this problem when you have to convince your end customer saying, okay, this is when I think it's going to bring value, probably this is the first time that we were doing, but like, how do you then, what are the way by which you kind of bring the sponsor on the same side of yours and then help you to evangelize? Yeah.
It's a good question. It's not easy. I mean, in fact, one of the projects which we, started in October last year, we had to work for 1 year, not not for 1 month, to basically convince the customer that there is an ROI within a year you will be able to realize what you've spent, and you'll be able to start reaping the benefits. It's not easy because I think many a times there is skepticism. I mean, on both the sides. I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm not trying to blame one or the other, that, okay, does it really make sense? I mean, the solution provider will say, why should I put so much of money ahead of the project? Because I'm not going to gain that money. On the other side, the problem will be like, hey, I mean, I'm not sure about ROI. Why should I really sign up a project? So I think I would think if we have, like you said, we actually went to the customer and tried to understand their operations and basically we actually built an ROI for that project. It was a reasonably sized project, so customer would think twice before spending that money. So it's not easy. In fact, many of the projects will stay at proof of concept stage because of this specific reason. The ROI is not thought through in the beginning, and it's a afterthought. So then you suddenly start realizing that, hey, I don't have an ROI for this project, because if I go from POC to production, I don't think I have an ROI. That happened in another project for us. We completed the POC. Everything was great, hunky dory, and the customer said, hey, your accuracy is great, 99%. Hey, but you know what? I mean, I don't have an ROI. So why should I go for production? So yeah, I think it's very important step. I would think from both solution provider and basically the organizations like Lakshman comes from, to basically come together and basically set up this ROI mechanism, saying, okay, so does this make sense, right? So it's very important to be transparent in that stage. I think if there is no transparency, I've seen it falling through, because if either side doesn't let the transparency happen, then it's a problem. So it's not an easy task, but I think, like I said, sometimes it takes a month, but years.
Words, golden words. I mean, Mr. Lakshman, so what would be your suggestion, being an industry veteran for solution provider like Eugenie.ai or Wipro, or for say the rest of the industry, right? How should we evangelize projects of such kind when we have to bring practitioner on board? What should be the, if I may say, a framework with which we should help them to think through what should be the project and what should be the scope? How do we prove the ROI or the value of the project that we're delivering? So what's going to be your suggestion for practitioners?
Before I even go to the solution provider, I would think of looking within ourselves in the refineries, the oil industry per se, that we should be able to empower our own people, back them, and build enough teams, IT, OT teams within our organizations, which will help enter into a dialogue with a solution provider like Hemchandra's. And that is when a clear understanding will come through to the whole situation. Like Hemchandra was saying, this transparency is sometimes lacking. This is because one industry wants to protect the data it has. So unless there is trust and transparency throughout this exercise, I don't see this going forward. So once trust is there, data sharing happens. And once data sharing happens, the other side, the solution provider, will be able to provide with many suggestions as to how we can take this forward. And he can develop his algorithms to suit the requirement of the oil industry. This is how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So trust is another issue. And I think I think the problem lies in both sides, right? So even like we as a solution provider, I don't think like we're doing a great job there. And some of the question that some of the points that Mr. Bhatt has mentioned about building technology first, and of course you are trying to sell too much technology, and of course the practitioner thing like, probably this is not something which is going to solve my problem, because you did not start thinking problem first. You were just there to sell the product rather than actually solving my problem. So now that's again the question back to you, Mr. Bhatt. For a successful implementation of a project of such, right, it requires a lot of effort, both sides, and build the trust equations and cooperative systems. So what would be your suggestion if a new solution provider is like not as big as Wipro, maybe half of your side would like to address, would like to enter in this market? What would be your suggestion? So how should they approach a problem of this sort, and like how they should deal with the internal stakeholders like IT/OT teams, as Mr. Lakshman was mentioning. So what's going to be your suggestion for that?
I think, like Lakshman also mentioned, I also see a problem within the solution providers also. The people who are front-ending, okay, for example, a sales process, what happens is that there is a front-end salesperson and there's a solution architect or a solution group like my group, let's say. So what happens is that it's very important within our solution providers organization also to basically make sure sensitize them or basically educate them, let's call it that way, on what AI can or cannot do, right? So many a times what I've seen, actually I remember in one of the projects that the front end salesperson went ahead and basically sold a moon, and and the solution group, I mean, it is already signed up as a project. So the solution group was really struggling to meet that moon, right? So it was not possible. I mean, like, for example, I mean, to give an example, it was promised that, okay, I'll get to 94% accuracy within 3 months of operation, right? So we had done a POC and we are jumping from POC to a production, and the POC was like 60%, and you're jumping from 60 to 94%, and the promise was made. So I think it's very important to understand the people who are involved in that process, the whole process, right? The customer touch points from a solution provider perspective, they need to be very conversant on the solution itself. Well, that's the first thing, and the AIs, what it can or what it cannot do, and go and promise a moon and which cannot be done, then actually it's a, I mean, the okay, maybe a startup may go bust with such a scenario, because you can't deliver and you've gone into a loop of vicious circle, right? So I think it's very important for the whole organization as a whole, uh, who have all touch points with the customer, sales, the project management, the solution group, all to be in sync to make sure what we are actually delivering and promise what you want to deliver. And then take, of course, like I earlier mentioned, problem first approach and work that way, rather than working like I have a solution, I have to somehow sell it, right? So which will definitely not work. I mean, in fact, I've tried that earlier and it didn't work. So we've gone ahead and changed our approach, and it seems to work. So I think it's very important for the whole organization to be in sync with what we are selling and what we are promising, right? And make sure that is delivered. Of course, I think it will get delivered as long as you're promising the right thing, right? So, and of course, make sure that you understood the customer's problem right, so that your solution is like not off the track from what the customer is looking at. So, as long as that is done, I think, of course, there are commercial aspects. Of course, I think that's another aspect which you see. I think because of this, I think initially when you start off, there's trust factor, right? So there's maybe some amount of investment that may be required in the initial stages to build that trust from a solution provider perspective, and that's what we are trying to do as well. And maybe once that trust is built, actually there's more transparency, and I think the successes will follow. That's my take on it.
Thank you. I mean, that's exactly what I think you also mentioned before about the transparency. I think coming times and again, so transparency seems like the most important aspect in this industry, as far as the adoptions of technology within the organizations are concerned. Now, coming to Mr. Lakshman's, Mr. Lakshman, I would like to know from, say, for example, all of us must be aware of the fact that AI it's not a deterministic project, right? So it's like you are predicting, mostly probabilistic, that it might say, yeah, this asset might fail or might not fail with 60% probability and etc. So there is always a probabilistic approach to it, while the people on the shop floor, they have been tuned on a deterministic way, right? So the things it's always binary for them, like whether it will work or not work or not work. So, and there is a huge, as you say, also the evangelizations of what AI can do, cannot do. That's the groundwork we need to do. And so there are two things that's very important, like as most of the organization in India and across the globe, right, are getting into the newer phase of trying out digital technology because of course, COVID has helped us to, not help, right, in terms of opened our eyes to think, rethink about how to use digital technology in order to really transform our operations. The second thing that where we also see that this digital technology, in order to do the adoption, we need to do a rapid experimentation. We've got to do a lot of experimentations. So how do you think that the practitioner would open up doors for solution provider to help them get into this journey together, where we'll do this evangelization of technology, rapid prototyping, rapid experimentations, and not only think everything would be successful, right? Of course, there would be 80% of the project would be failure, but 20% project which would actually be successful will take them, this company like HPCL, IOCL, and others to the next level as a global forerunner. So what's your take on that, and how do you think that both practitioners and technology provider would come as a partnership program in order to make that happen? Mr. Lakshman? Sorry, you are on mute. You are on mute. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking of what, Sadeep, what you had mentioned and what Hemchandra had mentioned. Now, apart from this trust and transparency, what Hemchandra was saying, that a salesperson would go out there and overpromise. Now, like that guy's overpromises, there is also over-expectation on the part of the practitioner at the oil industry. They expect so much from AI because they've heard so much, read so much, they expect AI to do magic. But it doesn't happen that way, because any AI project, you need to do some experimentation, and experiments will fail. Some may succeed, but some may fail. But in India, what happens is failure is a bad word. So people are very reluctant because they are peacefully running their oil refinery, oil industry, and suddenly out of nowhere this AI guy comes and tells you that he will be able to do this. Now, this is where some amount of patience and tolerance to failure comes. Patience is a big virtue, and especially in adopting AI technology within the refinery, within the oil industry, it is of prime importance, because unless you have patience, you just can't take this thing forward. Unless you realize that this could give you benefits much more than what you have today in the future, especially today when the margins, the refining margins are very, very low. So only thing of taking it forward is getting money from some other source by tweaking it here, and that tweak is what AI is, and that people should understand that. And another thing is, people also have this fear in the oil industry about shutdown. Shutdown is a very bad word in the refinery. So now there are planned shutdowns which are okay, but unplanned shutdowns is a bad word. Now, unplanned shutdown happened because of various reasons. It is basically loss of integrity of an asset or many other reasons. There are 100 factors. I will not go into that now. But some of these people who are involved in the AI projects also feel that this intervention, external intervention, could also bring about a shutdown. This is a myth. It could be proven that it is not so, but sometimes people have this belief. So management should basically educate people, like Hemchandra said. There should be AI education. There should be appreciation of the IT by the OT people. And IT people also should appreciate, if not have a deep understanding of the OT, but at least should be able to appreciate what are their concerns. Once they are on even key on this, then I'm sure this can be taken forward.
Thank you. Thank you for your, again, so some of the questions a lot of questions are coming from, of course, from the audience. But before we get into that, I want to ask a few more questions about that. Like Mr. I'll start now, with Mr. Lakshman. So where do you think, Mr. Lakshman, in oil and gas industry are the bigger opportunity for AI use case? Like, other than you said, okay, today operational efficiency or to improve asset integrity and others. So, but where do you see, if you have to see three use case where AI can really would help companies to take leapfrog, like the next level, what would that three be? I know it's kind of, again, subjective, but like, say, think of it from an India point of view, Indian companies point of view.
So it's like this. See, presently, a refinery runs in a certain way, brings in certain amount of profits. Now, there's the potential which it can achieve, but actually, the actual performance does not always meet the potential, various reasons. Now, some are constraints which can be overcome by the team. Some are constraints which are falling outside the refinery, probably outside the industry itself. Now, it's important that we move as close to the potential. And that is where AI can help. They have to create what is known as a digital twin based on a licenser's perfect unit. And basis that, you can always track as to where is the deviation in actual performance from the potential performance. And that is one area which I certainly see AI getting into in the near future. It's already in some refineries, they're trying it out. And as I told you, reliability and integrity of assets is a huge, huge area. Any loss of integrity which results in a reliability issue not only affects the profits, it is also a safety concern, and it could also affect the environment. And these two things, once they come out in the open, that affects the company's brand image. And this is another area where AI can really move in, because there is huge amount of data within the industry, and using that data, historical as well as ongoing real-time data, and the associated parameters, like basically a refinery operates on pressure, temperature, and flow. So with those, you can always predict failure. And once you predict failure, the maintenance guys get time to prepare for the shutdown. And that is another area where AI can contribute. And in today's world, utilities are very, very critical, because though nobody talks about utilities, everybody talks about crude and products and all that, but utilities play a major, major part in any refinery. So by utilities, critical utilities like air, water, hydrogen is a major utility today. So, and water, I have known of refineries which have got shut down in the months of April, May, because there was no water. So these are the refineries which use fresh water for cooling. So if AI can get into that area where utilities can be optimized, then you can sustain operations for a longer period. So these are three areas which are top of the mind. It comes to me to where AI can contribute.
Thank you, Mr. Lakshman. Now over to you, Mr. Bhatt. So what do you think? Like, you probably not only oil and gas, maybe across the board, you were solving the complex problem for companies. So where do you see the major impact that a solution providers like yours creating today in the market?
Yeah, so I think there's been a talk about a lights out operation, so-called lights out operation. Right? So people are talking about lights out factories and lights out warehouses and whatnot, because I think the COVID has really disrupted the whole operations itself. I mean, even the essentials operations, right? So that is required. I mean, even manufacturing ventilators, I mean, which are required for the COVID cause itself, and for many of these operations, even including medical, I mean, manufacturing the required essentials for medical industry, and I think the AI, because the reason why, I mean, lights out factories today are not real. I mean, let's call it that. I think Tesla has been reasonably able to implement it, and some of them have implemented in some areas, but I think it's still not reality. I think the high variability that is there in the factories today, and for which you need, I mean, lots of people to be definitely available in the factories on the shop floor, is definitely the one of the areas where if AI can actually solve this variability. Of course, there are a lot of work that is happening in the vision systems and I mean other sensor systems that are required in the factories. I would believe, I mean, that's where I think people would like to go. Things like remote operation of factories, right? So how can I mean, basically look at running my factory sitting at my home, and still make sure the operation still runs with very minimal number of people, right? So because today I think we are not able to send people to offices or factories because I mean there are, I mean, a lot of issues because of COVID. So I think for people are talking about it, and I think looking for different kinds of technologies. It could be one is vision systems which can handle variabilities out there, predict hazards that could happen, handle variabilities, so I mean, so that the manufacturing operations can continue. Remote operation of assets, or basically the manufacturing shop floor, Of course, I mean, all these, I would think significant usage of AI will happen in all this. Beyond this, the prediction of many things, right, including production to failure to maintenance. So I would think these are the areas where I think a lot of AI work is happening today, and I think we see a lot of interest from customers as well.
Thanks. So one more thing that you mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, and it was about problem first versus solution first. Now I'll just bring that context again back, and you also mentioned about Tesla. And so, do you think there are few problems that are there, unmet needs in this industry, which requires a different types of thinking? For example, carbon emission is a big problem for this industry. Carbon footprint is a big problem for this industry. And I think if you look, I mean, when I was going through the shareholders, the stuff for all the big oil and gas and all the other manufacturing companies, most of them, if not all, have mentioned about sustainability as their major corporate goal. So how do you think that technology providers like us will play an important role in this journey for all these companies to become more sustainable? Do you see technology is going to play an important role there? Or if yes, then how? If you can
So I see there are two aspects to it. One is actually using it for sustainability itself. Before that, I mean, when we are basically as a solution provider, we are implementing something, right? So how sustainable my implementation is, I mean, how power hungry my implementation is. Like, do I need a GPU, or I'm just giving an example, or can I use CPU to run it, right? So I can actually reduce my one usage of power when itself, and basically that will reduce many other things, right? So maybe I'm using cloud or whatnot. I mean, so space, then the power, and I mean, it drives many more aspects to it. So when I'm implementing something, am I thinking about it, right? So that is one aspect. I mean, am I using the right footprint for my implementation, right? So do I really need like a compute system, or can I use a very small footprint a device, embedded device, which can actually run the whole thing? And can I use some newer technologies like, I mean, maybe the 5G we're talking about? So can I partition such that I can move many of the things which I'm doing on a edge to the cloud, or either way, right? So can I do such things? So maybe we need to start, when we need to really think from that perspective when we are really implementing our own solutions itself, because I believe that's a very important one aspect of sustainability. Of course, the second part of the sustainability is how can I help basically for example, let's say the sustainability is also like how good the air is around me, and can I actually build some, I mean, systems, AI systems that can help basically, at least first thing is help predict, or basically indicate that, okay, there's some problem here, and can I stop? I mean, basically based on that, I can divert my traffic or whatnot. I mean, so probably there's a lot that can be done in the sustainability aspect when it comes to people are talking about smart cities, right? So the smart city sustainability is going to be one of the things which there's a lot of work that needs to be done, is my feeling. I don't believe that we have enough done there.
Now, Mr. Lakshman, so do you see the oil and gas companies nowadays are thinking, of course, in one side they're thinking about building green, clean energies, right? So one side, solars, other sources of energies. But again, as with Texas and other incidents told us that also not sustainable. We need to coexist. And all different types, sources of energy have to coexist. So how do you think that in the future, the oil and gas company are going to change in that way in order to be more sustainable? And how do you see us, the technology providers, as a partner for helping these companies to achieve the same?
Sorry, what I would say here is, one is the oil industry starting last year has already embarked on and rather started producing excellent quality fuel. We're getting 10 ppm sulfur fuels in all the outlets all over India. So the air you breathe out there is much better because of that. Now, there are three major industries which create a lot of issues with carbon footprint. One is the transportation industry, one is the electric power generation industry, and the industry per se, where industry also uses a lot of fuel for its own requirements. Now, in all these, once AI contributes towards increasing or improving the efficiencies, certainly there is a huge improvement there. And that improvement not only affects or brings about an improvement in the society per se, it also improves the margins of the industry, which means that industry generates more profits, and that itself sustains itself. That increased profits, which was not available to hitherto, would be sustaining the refineries. The other thing is, AI would certainly help in reducing emissions and waste generation. And that today is a huge issue. Even if you are not, if you're producing good fuel, which is not polluting the environment out there in the streets, when you, within your industry, you develop certain emissions which are also not desirable. So today, if you see, most of the refineries are well within the environmental norms set by the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Pollution Control Boards. So here again, AI has moved in a big way, or rather initial POCs have been done, and this also would contribute towards improving the carbon footprint, as I see it.
Thank you again. So now I think it's time for taking us a few questions from the audience. So the first question that came: what are the practical advice for organization just getting started with AI? I think this is from the practitioner point of view. I think the audience has asked, like, I as say think of it a new manufacturing unit. I'm starting a new manufacturing unit. What are the practical advice for me to get started if I start thinking of using AI in my operation? Sorry, that's the question. So I would request both the panelists to add to this the answer.
Who's going first?
You can go, sir, first.
Okay, fine. Now it's like this. See, first of all, the industry has to be convinced that AI will come in and do a good job. For this, industry has to have faith, trust in the AI provider. Industry has to be open with respect to the data which it has. You cannot be cagey in these things. You have to open out to the other person, because ultimately the industry is going to benefit. So once you do this, the solution provider will be at a better position to offer solutions which are tailor-made to you, rather than him giving you off-the-shelf product. Off-the-shelf product may not help the particular industry. So everything in this particular industry would, and even from within the industry, from refinery to refinery, the solution would change because of the technology which is used in the various refineries. So this is my take on this.
Yeah. Mr. Bhatt, can I add?
Yeah, so maybe my thinking would be don't start big bang, go small. Because there'll be a lot of skepticism because this person who's going to drive this initiative will be under a lot of pressure, first of all, because he or she is trying to prove something. And if you do a big bang, I still remember there was a project when they did a big bang automation and big bang AI implementation, and suddenly the production dropped from 100% to 10%. So there's a huge cry about it. So something is important for the organization, but start small. Don't do big bang. I mean, that would be my advice.
Thank you. So, I mean, I can certainly say that, Pareto would help here, right? So which 20% of your operations need your 80% of the production. So in that you can start at the first. now the next question, very important, I mean, very interesting question. To implement AI, should we adopt an external solution or should we code from the scratch? This is, I think, Mr. Bhatt, if you can go first. So, so if someone wants to build the solution, say, for example, within the industry, they think of adopt an external solution or, building, within the organization.
Yeah, so I think the first thing we should remember is that there's no point in reinventing a wheel, right? So if there is a solution which you can actually integrate into, I mean, if there's an AI component that is already available, which is proven, and you need to basically do that analysis to find out whether that's proven and it's already there, right, in the marketplace, and somebody is using it and there's a reference. And if that component is really working well and you want to integrate that, that's the right thing to do, because end of the day, I mean, we are a solution providers end of the day for the customers, and we don't want customers to fail. That's the first thing, right? And customers also are looking for something that is as quickly as possible. I mean, if there is something, there's a wheel which you can actually use it in your overall mechanism and integrate that, and that works well. I think that's the best thing to do. Uh, from working from scratch, people will ask 100 questions because have you proven it? Is it been working in some place? That's a very difficult question to answer.
Yeah, so build versus buy. So again, this question is depending upon what level of scale that you are expecting and how fast you expect, right? So someone has already proven it. They have in the form of product. Looks like it can be applied to your context. I think better to buy than a build. Again, like if you want to build a point solution for a specific problem that you have, probably let's go ahead and build. Over to you, Mr. Lakshman, if you want to add anything from your experience, like where you had to build versus buy in your past experience, probably if you can bring that context, probably that would help.
For general systems, probably buy would be okay, because let's say a compressor, in the refinery, compressors are very critical equipment, and basically they're the heart of many units. Now, compressors are the same in many industries. So if somebody has got a ready-made solution to monitor a compressor and predict its behavior and also predict failure, I'm sure that can be a straightaway case of buying. But there are other processes within the refinery which are a little more intricate, which would require a provider to come and sit with the OT and IT people within the industry and get a better understanding. And that would be a longer process, an iterative process it would be. And there the industry also has to be prepared to do some experimentation. Ultimately, this experiment could fail. Ultimately, it will succeed. Somewhere it will succeed. And the industry has to be patient for that. That's what I feel.
Thank you. And the last question, which was, what are the consequences if AI fails? Mr. Bhatt, if you can, draw some experience. I mean, if you can recall some of your experience in the past. You spoke about this already. 10% production went down. So yeah, if you can recall a few such experience from your past.
Is this question for me or for Mr. Lakshman?
Everyone. So for everyone, what are the consequences if AI fails? No, I'm just joking. In general, like in practitioner, I would say that, what are the consequences if AI fails, and what are the mindset that people might have, right? So, especially from the practitioner point of view, it's okay to fail, right? AI, you are basically getting into an experimentation mode. You never know whether everything will work or not. Maybe it will work, may not work. So how would a practitioner, set the expectation right so that they can inculcate failure culture within the operation? So what's your take on that? And similarly, Mr. Lakshman, what would be your take on that?
I do not believe that, the kind of POCs we have done with AI have caused any issues within the refineries. And going forward also, I don't think we will experiment with those critical ones immediately. And once the industry gets confidence regarding the POCs, I'm sure they'll venture into newer units. The only thing which I would caution a solution provider is Like I said, shutdown is a bad word in a refinery, and a fire is a very bad word. It's like bordering on profanity. So once you are not going to cause anything like that, I'm sure any practitioner would be willing to adopt AI and take his cause forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Bhatt?
Yeah, so I think in one of the cases, what happened, I think we need to be little bit cautious about, I think I spoke about the ROI earlier, right? So where I have seen failures is that it's not a failure of the POC, but failure, I mean, see, why are we doing a POC is basically we want to go into production with that solution, right? So it was not thought through initially that, okay, so whether there is an ROI with if I do this, right? So and there was a maybe the stakeholders within the customer organizations, right? So there was a stakeholder who was basically focused on the R&D part of it, and there is a business stakeholder. So what happened was that R&D stakeholder got excited and he said, okay, let's do this kind of a thing, and we did that. But finally, the business stakeholder came back and said, well, I mean, this may not make sense for me for this particular. It was a warehouse automation. So it doesn't make sense for this warehouse, but maybe it makes sense for some other warehouse. So probably the misunderstanding within all the stakeholders, right? So that could have been avoided. I mean, you could have avoided the effort which was spent by all the solution provider, the organization within to carry out this POC, because we knew that, I mean, there's no ROI even if you prove it. So there's no point in doing that. So probably I would see failure not just because it didn't work, but failure because we are not able to introduce into the organization in a bigger way. And I would call that also as a failure, because that's a very important step in the whole process. Why are we doing this POC is to make sure it goes into larger production. So I think it's very important to set those, I mean, all the stakeholders coming together and making sure that, yeah, this makes sense to do or not to do. I think that's what I would think. And if it failed, like it was a disappointment for everyone. I mean, the solution provider, it was a disappointment for sure. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think we are on the top of the hour. So over to you, Pratik. And I think I really enjoyed today's discussion. I think these are all wisdom, pulse of wisdom. Like this is in the same place, getting so many real insight. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Over to you, Pratik. I will just later on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sodip. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary. Thank you, Mr. Bhatt, and thank you, Mr. Venugopal, for your thought-provoking and insightful discussion. It was very interesting and informative session, I will say. After this discussion, what we have came to understand that some key takeaways is after this session, that climate change is the biggest challenge of today that need urgent action as a shared vision of industries, government and society. Reducing industrial carbon footprint will demand concrete investment in AI-enabled operational technology. Optimization industrial operation is a requirement and an obligation from the standpoint of humanity. The key to digital adoption is including people, processes, and assets is building technical and operational resilience. With that, I just want to welcome Mr. Sodip Chaudhary for his closing remarks for the session.
Yeah, again, just to summarize what we discussed, we spoke across different topics, and in one way, I could say that if I were to summarize, I would say that again, as to solve the biggest AI adoption problem, that's the topic today. I think we got to build solution from the solution point of view, which are problem first and technology first. Second, we got to inculcate the culture of trust with the practitioners, and then similarly vice versa, like IT, OT, and etc. We got to evangelize. The failures of projects is not most often it's not due to technology would fail, but because we did not evangelize enough so that people then use it and then understand the value of it. Proving the value of ROI is very important for project to be successful, and that requires from both side investment and also setting the expectation right in terms of investment, and ensuring that we measure those investment ROI in a more concrete manner, so that would help to set the platform for evangelizing AI product. We spoke about there are definitely many use cases in which AI can be useful and valuable for the overall operation industry, starting from reliability and integrity of assets, utility areas, light out factories, high availability, remote factories, digital twins, and so on and so forth. But at the bottom of it, well, industry is getting digitally transformed at the same times, like Pratik mentioned, reducing the carbon footprint. Well, of course, oil and gas and other industry has already started doing some proactive actions toward it. But I think we need to do more as a community, as an industry, as a consortium. And in the coming days, from Eugenie side, I can say that we would like to be part of such initiative, both from government and from the industry point of view. And with that, I will close this session. Thank you again, all the esteemed speakers and all the audience who spent their evening with us. It was a lovely discussion. I really thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you, Mr. Lakshman. Thank you, Mr. Bhatt, for spending.
Thank you very much.
It's really.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sodip.
Thank you, CII.
As all good things come to an end in life, so is the webinar. A digital event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheel starts rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and a bird eye for details. On behalf of CII, I will take this opportunity to thank everyone, those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this informative knowledge session. At the outset, I deem it great honor to propose vote of thanks to our distinguished speaker, Mr. Shrodip Raichaudhuri and Mr. Hemchandra Bhatt and Mr. Lakshman Venugopal. We are really enlightened with your presence and knowledge on the subject. I will also like to thank Ms. Vaibhavi Joshi and Ms. Gayatri Mopanar from Eugenie.ai for making this extraordinary knowledge session a possibility and for their enthusiastic support. A special thanks to my colleague Mr. Rajat Parashar for his enthusiastic support and coordination. Our heartfelt thanks to all delegates, not only for their active participation, but also sparing their valuable time with us. With these warm words and kind message, we move to an end of the today's webinar. Thank you. Wish you all healthy and safe weekends. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.